In this video, I'm going to show you how I set myself a challenge of recreating this abstract painting in a print format. I've got two prints. This one, which was my first print, and then a little bit more fun, complicated version of it after I've rearranged some of the pieces on the plate. I hope this video inspires you to be playful. I hope you enjoy it. All right, so I have copied the basic design from my printout onto a Perspex sheet, and I'm just going to copy it now using carbonated paper onto the plate. And this is my printout. And the idea is to get some basic shapes and cut them out. So I've decided that I'm going to start with the blue and red shapes. So I'm cutting out all the areas where all the blue and red shapes are. And my sort of basic colour, the very first colour I'm going to use is going to be that blue, which actually on the printout turned out different blue. It's more of a sort of turquoise blue. So I'm going to cut out all the areas where blue and red is, and I'm going to deep score into it, and I'm going to ink it all up with that turquoise blue, and then I'm going to place the red shapes on top. But anyway, you'll find out when I do it. So I'm just securing the Perspex sheet so it doesn't slide around and I don't make any mistakes. I'm just going to help myself with ruler, and I'm just basically penciling on top of it just to get the marks on the plate. Right, so now I've got my basic lines on the plate. I'm just going to cut them all out. As simple as that. Okay, so the next step is on all the areas that I've just cut out, I'm going to put some gesso on there. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to have some interesting texture. So as I apply the gesso with a palette knife, what I'm looking for is those interesting marks that palette knife will achieve. I can also scratch into it and just do whatever I want. Gesso dries really quickly and solidly, so it's quite a nice medium to use for calligraphy. So as you can see, I'm sort of carefully putting it into all the cutout shapes, but I will also apply it to all my leftover cardboard pieces that I haven't peeled off. And again, this is also to create interesting texture that hopefully ink will get trapped into and show. What I don't want from my print is to be really flat. I want there to be some rough surfaces, some smooth areas. I want there to be some contrast with textures and shapes and shades. So this is a reason why I'm using gesso here. Sorry, my head is in the way here. I need to place my camera in a better place. Hopefully it doesn't bother you too much. So yeah, I'm just using a bit of smoothing with the finger just to get it into all the nooks and crannies on the edges. And then I'm using a comb just to add a bit of texture again and a bit of interest. And just applying a little bit more gesso here. And as you can see, also putting that gesso onto the raised areas that I haven't peeled off, again to get a bit more interesting texture. Okay, after I've let this whole plate dry, here comes my other favorite ingredient, and that's wood glue. And I'm going to spread this wood glue with a color shaper. It's a fantastic tool that I often use for painting, but I'm going to use it here to spread my wood glue in a sort of interesting textured fashion so that it gives me some interesting contrasts, because when I ink up and then I wipe the ink off, although these areas the glue has been applied will be a lot lighter. So this is why I'm doing this, really, just to get again some contrasts and textures. Right, so now I'm ready to cut out all my red shapes. And I'm just referring back to my design and just taking the Perspex sheet where I've traced the image. And I'm basically cutting out all the red bits that I'm then going to be ready to be inked up and placed on a plate when I'm printing. All right, now that I've got all my red shapes ready, I'm going to carefully put them in this little compartment because I don't want to lose them. They all see through, so they're a bit of a nightmare at getting lost. So this is a really good way of keeping them all in one place and knowing these are all my red shapes. I strongly recommend doing that if you do a complex design, a bit like doing a jigsaw puzzle, really. So now for the very last bit, I'm going to trace all the light shapes, the last sort of layer of my design. All right, and now I've got all my bits ready, so I'm just going to seal the plate with a bit of shellac, just so that I protect it from getting damaged during my printing process. It always extends the life of the plate as well, so it's always useful to do it. All right, so now I'm ready to ink up. This is my Turquoise Lake Intaglio ink. I'm just going to apply it. I started off with a palette knife, and then I've switched on to a brush. It's just a lot easier to get it onto the plate quickly, and I'm trying to sort of avoid the raised areas because they will be a different color, but it's impossible to completely avoid them as I want to go all the way into the edges. So I'm gonna have to go over them a little bit, which is fine. I'm just gonna have to wipe off. They're full of wood glue, so they should be smooth enough to be able to wipe. Even though, as you can see, I'm getting a bit of ink over them, it doesn't matter too much, as I can get them wiped off clean. And then I'm just going to roll a different color ink on top, and it should work out. It should be fine. It's okay for colors to blend a little bit. It's always better if they do, in fact. That's why I do prefer using the same plate instead of using separate plates. And I wasn't looking for any white areas here in between edges as well, so this is the preferred method. Right, so I'm mixing inks now for all the raised areas, the lighter areas here, which will be different colour, and I just mixed some zinc white with the Turquoise Lake and added some raw sienna with white. So I just really am doing that to create a different sort of colour, a mixture of all those three inks to get a sort of muted blue, if you like. And I'm using this thin roller because I can be a bit more accurate with it. So I just want to apply it just to those areas, particular areas. And I'm being really careful not to get it onto the dark blue areas, which is actually not too difficult because the areas that I'm applying ink to are raised. So because I'm using a roller, it makes it easier. Okay, so now that I've finished applying my second colour, I'm ready to do my third colour, and this is really a mixture of two reds, the sort of very intense red with a bit of Madder Lake. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want the red shapes to have sort of two shades to them. I want a little bit of light, very intense red with slightly muted, darker red on there. So I'm just applying the red, the intense red I just rolled out with a roller. And I'm hoping to use this thinner roller to add a bit of interesting texture with that dark red. And I'm doing that really because I don't want these shapes to be flat. I want them to have some depth and color variation. And this is a bit of a fiddly part. I'm just adding these shapes with some tweezers on top of the plate. It can be a bit tricky to roll out onto the Perspex sheet because this Perspex sheet gets, the plastic sheet gets attached to the roller. So yeah, you just have to be really careful. It can be a bit fiddly, but fun. I really enjoyed doing it. So you can really see now that I'm placing all those red shapes, how fun this design is going to be. I shall really look forward to seeing the final print. Yeah, it's all looking good. Great, so now we've got all the red shapes in, so I'm going to now mix up the third color, and I'm just using really the same palette as before, and my brush is a little bit dirty with the red that I've just used, and that's kind of great because I'm basically using all the colors that I've already used as my third fourth color really, that's going to come on, and that should unify the design. And because I'm using the same palette, the colors should work well together. So this bit here, it's a bit of a mammoth bit. It's quite big actually. I've realized that it's quite large, a bit too large to cope with, and I'm actually going to cut it up in my second run. Because it's a little bit difficult to manage with rolling paint on, as well as actually applying it to the plate without sort of moving all the bits together. So that's quite a tricky part, and I wouldn't advise having such a large piece because as you can see, I'm really struggling with getting onto the plate. It's getting stuck, put it in the wrong place, then it's difficult to move it, a bit of a nightmare. So yeah. Beware of that, learn from my mistakes. But it worked out in the end. Just a bit more fiddly, that's all. And finally, I can't believe it's finally time to print. So here we go. I'm precariously putting it onto the printing press, and we're ready. All right, so I'm putting my wetted paper and a bit of newsprint, a bit of cardboard, some blankets, and let's pull it through. And after peeling all the bits off, this is the very exciting part of revealing. Oh, look at those colors. Love the colors. And here we go. It looks pretty cool. I'm really pleased with it. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, one thing I'd say, the last color, the sort of pinkish sienna color, is probably a little bit too blocky. I'd like to make it more interesting. So what I decided to do is use the same pieces, plastic pieces, but I'm going to add a slightly darker shade of my last color, and I'm just going to ink up a little bit of each shape, and I'm going to stick it on top of my print and run it through the press, just because I think that pink, that salmon pink, is just a little bit too blocky, a bit boring. I need something a bit more interesting going on there. Okay, so my image is back on my printing press bed, and I'm just applying ink face down because I'm going to print straight onto the image. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it's very difficult actually to match the shapes. It's much easier to do it straight onto your printout. And here is the second piece. I've just inked up with a little bit of that shade. Okay, so now the last of the pieces are coming on top of the design. It's not as fiddly as doing it on the plate, I have to say, because there's nothing to stick on. So this is a lot better method. And one more piece. Here we go. Oh, one more. Forgot about that one. Here we go. So just a bit of newsprint, cardboard again, run it through the press, and here we go. Just revealing one by one. It's looking a lot better, and there's a bit more interest in that really blocky sort of salmon pink area. I much prefer it. So it was really well worth. Okay, so this part of the video is dedicated to my second print, and the second print is going to be different in the sense that I have learned that the very last ink should have some variety in it. So as you can see, I'm not going to bore you with going through the same process again. I've inked up the blue, the lighter shade of blue, and also the red. And I'm going to show you here that I am on purpose going to be a little bit less blocky with my last color, with that sort of pinkish salmon pink. I'm going to on purpose use two colors together when I roll out. As you can see, I haven't blended the colors, and I'm going to sort of apply it so that I have two different shades coming through, just so I don't end up with this very kind of dull blocky pink again. Okay, so ready for printing, all in place hopefully, and ready to put through the press after all the blankets and newsprint and cardboard applied. And here we go, the moment of the reveal. So I decided to put the print back on the press because I felt it needed something more interesting. I felt it was a bit boring. I was happy with the texture of the foreground, but I felt like I needed to do something else. So after peeling off all my red bits, I decided to reuse them. I didn't clean them on purpose because I wanted to use the ink that they've pulled off the original plate, and because there are some very interesting effects on those peeled off bits of plastic sheet, and they've picked up the shapes and colors. As you can see, that one's picked up quite a bit of red, so I'm gonna reuse it and put it somewhere else. All right, so now all the pieces are down. I am ready to take it through the... All right, so now we can start peeling off all the shapes, which is the exciting bit, just to reveal what the final image is like. Okay, and here's the final printout. I'm super happy with it. Really love the transparencies, love the randomness of the final print. It's kind of busy but fun. Yeah, it's really good way to experiment and get something really unexpected. Just to rearrange all your pieces on a plate and just try running it through it again. Have fun. Thank you for watching.